Entrepreneurs need not apply. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. In our 15th year, I like to say, Mr. Nash.
We have some listeners who congratulated us on 15th as they send in winning guesses for Pick That Flick, which will be playing later in the show.
Perfect. So I don't have to say that then. So that's perfect. And there'll be a new release there with our friends at Deep Discount as well.
Deep Discount.
And but learn all about us so you can subscribe, follow, and like us at focusgroupradio.com. Our shows are released at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays via the stream on Facebook and YouTube, or which you can time shift and listen to anytime. And then an audio-only feed goes out on Saturdays, which still is the king of all the programming.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to us. And that's what people were used to listening to us on Saturdays at Sirius XM. So,
but if you want to watch, we have graphics, we have our shining faces.
I know. I almost picked this for Caught My Eye, but did you see the story about the Delta flight going from Atlanta to Barcelona where somebody got sick on it?
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes. And
diarrhea?
Yeah, and it was on the aisle to the bathroom. Like, I read some strange
How does that
stuff.
happen? Yeah.
I don't know.
I went to The Guardian, which, I guess is kind of like the New York Post or something, but they were talking about how the crew was mopping up they had returned to Atlanta. They were somewhere up over Manhattan. I didn't know why they turned around and went back to Atlanta and just didn't go into New York. But they had to rip up the carpeting and all this stuff. I thought I'd be
There's
mortified.
your answer. You want to be on a plane with stinky something going across
8-hour flight. They said they could have kept going, but I guess it would have been nasty. I don't know. I got sick on a plane once. Not like that.
Oh,
but I had that when I had my appendix. My appendix, thank God, didn't explode. But I remember saying to the woman, the flight attendant, I said, I was sitting in an exit row. And I didn't, and it was back in the mid 2000s where planes would sit on runways for 2-3 hours.
Yep.
And so the pilot says, we're number 45 for takeoff. And I was sitting there, we're going from Philadelphia to Vegas, and I thought, 45, each one takes about 3 minutes. I thought, oh my God, I said, I got to get off the plane. I'm going to get sick. There's no way I can make this. So I said to the flight attendant, I said, I need to get off. She goes, we're not getting out of line. I said, well, then I'm going to have to open the emergency gate. She goes, and then you'll go to prison.
And then you'll go to prison.
What's wrong with you? And so she hands me, 2 cans of ginger ale and some dry, dry crackers and pretzels and
saltines.
Saltine tells me to hang out in the bathroom. She allowed me to go in and out of the bathroom, but I didn't know what it was because I didn't know it was my appendix, obviously. But yeah, I remember saying I'm going to open the emergency hatch. I need to go back.
I will say this about you and flying: you have had. Not only have you had medical problems on a plane that you made it to Vegas, then you went to the emergency room.
Yeah, taken
but
out.
you've also had things happen where you were getting ready to go to ski. You were meeting me and a bunch of us for a ski trip. That was a Subaru thing as well.
Oh, yeah.
And you slipped and fell somehow, and you fell down your staircase at Glenside.
Oh, my God. Slipped my foot open.
Yes. And you made the flight the next morning.
Well, because I told Chris, our friend, the comrade, I said, I can't go. You're coming. I put this trip together. You're coming. Meanwhile, when I finally went to the hospital in Telluride, the woman says, ooh, you needed stitches. But it's too late now. You're going to have to. So I couldn't ski. I couldn't do anything. I mean, it was ridiculous that I went out with a cut, bloody foot.
I remember.
I thought you were going to talk about the time when I was with Curbs, and he had them so flustered, and we ended up taking a flight for free. This is after 9/11, by the way. How we got on the plane with no tickets and flew to Telluride. And he just said, just keep stuff in your hand and run through the gate. And we jumped on the plane. I mean, yeah. I've been on the wrong plane before. I've been overbooked because of the same name, Tim Bennett. There was one person in the seat, and I was already in the seat. The flight attendant said, let me see your tickets. I've got 9A. I've got 9A. All right, who's Tim Bennett? We're both like, I am. She's like, oh, no.
The worst possible scenario, right? You're
voted us out.
Both Tim Bennett's.
Then the plane blew. The window blew out of the cockpit once.
I remember you told me about
emergency
that.
land. Yeah, no, I've had a few.
You have had more in-flight issues. I've had a couple hair raisers. I was doing consulting work for John Hancock years and years ago, flying the shuttle back from Boston, and it was a rainy, stormy night. And LaGuardia is got like the shortest, most dangerous runways in the.
On a good day.
And the plane lands and bounces really hard, and all those masks came down. Boom, everything opens up, and then it takes off again. And now I'm gripping the seat. And the stewardess is like,
I don't mean to laugh,
like,
but
well, you can
did you
laugh
put?
now.
Did they want you to put the masks on?
No,
or-
that was an accident. It hit so hard that it dislodged the emergency system. So she's like, nobody, no, you don't need those. We're going to circle around and land again. And some guy says, why land again? Like we tried the first time. I mean, we made it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's.
Hey, so couple of like weird housekeeping things. You and I on Unbuttoned on Tuesdays Unbuttoned, we talked about 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, which that year was a gorgeous Monday. I was going to say on that show that I recalled, and we were getting ready for this show, that for a brief moment, I think it was maybe 9 or 10 months, everybody was nice to each other, and
Yep.
if you were from New York, you got treated really special. Like, were you there? Were you there when it happened? Yeah, I was there. Oh, tell us about it. Oh, maybe you don't want to tell us about it. So I just remember that nice feeling of when everybody was like, oh, we're all Americans. It's not about red or white or what hat you're wearing, whatever. And the other thing I was going to say is I went to have my eyes checked again. Now, the last time I had this done was at the end of 2020. So it was like we were in the pandemic. You had to wear the masks a whole bit. And at that time, I had a prescription done for reading glasses. And it was mild, but one eye is different than the other because I think I have astigmatism, which I didn't really know what this meant. So I go to a new eye doctor. It's a really great office. They do that thing where they scan your eye and you look here, look there. The eye doctor comes in and he says, oh, John, I got to tell you, you're my favorite appointment of the day. You should have been here 2 hours ago when I was dealing with some crazy stuff. I'm like, wait, he goes, your eyes are fine. Your prescription's fine. You don't need anything updated. And I said, yeah, well, I've got this stigmatism. You know what that is, don't you? I said, no. I said, I think it's something wrong with my eye. He goes, no, it just means one of your eyeballs is shaped a little bit different than the other. He goes, that's all.
Is that all?
So I said, I said, you sure I don't need new prescription? No, you're fine. Your eyes are good. I said, how is that even possible that after 3 years they haven't gotten worse? And he shrugs. He goes, I don't know. He goes, don't complain.
What do you remember what you got charged for the eye doctor?
$50.
What?
Yeah.
$50? Where did insurance cover it or something?
Yep. Insurance.
Oh,
covered it,
that's
yeah.
why. Okay. Usually I go. It's $3. My insurance doesn't cover eye doctor.
However, here's an oddball thing. If he wrote a prescription for a new set of glasses, it was going to be $100 because insurance doesn't cover the writing of a script.
For God's sakes.
Go figure that one out, right?
It's outrageous. Outrageous. I mean, what I pay for insurance is over $1,000. It's outrageous.
But this eye thing, I remember you and Greg were similar. Like when Greg started eating readers, it's progressed pretty quickly. Like year after year, the prescription changed, and then it kind of held steady. And you were the same. You went from like 2020 to like something different pretty quick, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of planes again, I got on a plane and I got my usual magazines at the newspaper stand, and then I start to read. I can't read, and I thought, wow, I must be sick. Something's wrong. So then someone's like, oh, you just need readers. And I just turned 40. And somebody said, oh, once you turn 40, you're going to need them. But my mom and dad never did. But anyway, I just started wearing glasses all the time now. So I've got these progressives, which I can see for distance or I can see up closer for reading. And I took to them pretty quick, but I'm lost. I'd be lost without them. I should get an extra pair. I don't have one.
Oh, Tim.
But but I need to get an extra pair.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap. But I went from just having to use readers to if I was driving, I needed them. And so I thought instead of me just taking them on and off, and being vain, I'll just keep them on. But I don't like having to wear them, but I guess it's, what am I going to do?
Hey, and here's another one. You know my old business partner, Greg. We were just talking about him. He came to visit Bob when Bob was in the hospital this summer, and we all kind of caught up and chatted. And then Greg goes, hey, by the way, I have cataract surgery coming up.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, cataract surgery? Mention it to the eye doctor. He goes, oh, very common. Most people have cataracts. He goes, you might not. He goes, you never know.
They go in and they peel. Doesn't that
yes,
peel
they they flip the lid up, they get the cataract, and they put a new lens in, which is supposedly remarkable.
Not me. On those happy notes, what caught your eye this week, Mr. Nash?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
You know I'm a sucker for a found fortune. And
Oh,
this
boy.
one I think you're going to relate to when you see it. So the headline is this. Rare painting bought for $4 at a thrift store may fetch $250,000 at auction.
Looks like something Richard would have, doesn't it? Not
well,
the
you
frame.
might recognize the artist as, well, okay, browsing a New Hampshire thrift shop for old frames to restore, a woman who has chosen to remain anonymous to the press bought a white frame with an old painting inside for $4.
Oh, my God.
She had no idea the painting was actually a rare work by renowned American artist N.C. Wyeth.
Oh, my God.
This would be the father
Holy crow.
of Mary Seaton's. She was
Yes,
the
Andrew Wyeth.
Andrew Wyeth, right? So who was N.C. Wyeth? Newell Converse Wyeth was one of the preeminent illustrators in the early 20th century. Among his best-known book illustrations are the vibrant, swashbuckling images he made for Robert Louis Stevenson's 1911 novel Treasure Island. I love those pictures. He is also the father of painter Andrew Wyeth, and Tim has a connection to Andrew Wyeth as well, and the grandfather of painter Jamie Wyeth. So this woman had the painting sitting around for a while, and she took it out, and she decided to have it looked at because she thought there's something about this painting. So the painting is one of 4 illustrations Wyeth did for a 1939 edition of Helen Hunt Jackson's Ramona, a novel about Scottish Native American orphan living in Southern California after the Mexican-American War. So she finds this thing. She goes to an auction house. I think it's called Bonham's Skinner. The painting was heavy with dust. And she comes in, they clean it a little bit, and he says, "Do you know what you have here?" And she's like, "No." And he says, "Well, we believe you have an N.C. Wyeth." And the last one of his that was found from this particular series of book illustrations sold for $665,000. I mean, not $4, $665. What happens next? The auction house, Bonham's Skinner, estimates the painting will sell for between $150,000 to $250,000 when it goes up for auction on September 19th, which is only days from now. Lewis says that the thrift store shopper and her husband are not wealthy. They are not your typical art collectors, and if this sells for what they think it's going to sell for, it would be a life-changing event for them. So I just think this is hysterical because this is one, you know me. I always love these, find the Declaration of Independence. But you are connected to Wyeth through Mary Seaton, right? Because she used to be his muse. Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of the paintings he did included her. And actually, there's one called The Liberal that is actually Mary.
That's
And
her, she is the subject, right?
She's the subject, and he painted her. But he used her boobs a lot. He liked her boobs. And there's another woman, and of course now her name escapes me, but there was another woman that was his muse as well. But Mary says, and I believe Mary, that a lot of times while this other muse was reported and publicly announced, he liked Mary's boobs better. He used to use her boobs.
And you know Mary would have told you the truth, right?
And Betsy Wyeth, Andrew's wife, wanted a Subaru really bad. So, but she wanted the cheapest Subaru she could find. And
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, it was hilarious. So, we used to sell cars to the Mennonite community. You know, they have no radios, no air conditioning, black, no hubcaps, nothing. So I said, Mary, I've got this postal wagon because it's even on the steering wheel's on the wrong side, right? They were these postal wagons we made for the U.S. Postal Service. I said, I can get you one of those for like $9,000. Sold. So I'm like, what do you need it for? She goes, oh, Betsy likes to ride around the farm. And so I don't even know if I should tell this story, but
you're halfway down the rabbit hole.
So Betsy Wyeth would get up in the morning and get dressed and say she was going shopping, and she would jump in the Subaru and she'd drive down the end of the street, and there was a barn at the end of the road. It was all our property, huge property in Chester County, and it was all set up like a little shop. And so she'd go in and she'd buy gifts and purchase gifts and do whatever and put them in a bag and be gone. Come home around lunchtime, show everybody what she bought. And said she was out shopping and she saw the girl, had tea, you know, she came up with all the things she did. And I'm like, and what did you do? And Mary says, well, then that afternoon I would take the stuff back down to the barn. She'd go shopping again the next day. And so...
I love stories like that. I don't know why, but I love that story.
And I was like, she's fine. She just likes to play shopping. I was like, you're kidding me, right? So I got the most lovely note from her. She didn't quite understand how Mary was able to get this car so cheap. And at the time I was working with the U.S. ski team. And for some reason, she thought I was an Olympic skier or something, but I've got this lovely note from Betsy Wyatt thanking me for the deal on the car and for having Seton get the car for her. So it was, yeah. So, yeah, it was
There you go. See, I knew this caught my eye would not only tickle, scratch my fancy of like the found treasure, but it would also tickle out another story from Mary Seton and Andrew Wyeth.
Well, it's I can't believe there was a guy we both know that worked at Timberland McLean, and his wife had a similar find. Went to
I remember this.
Went to a thrift store in South Carolina and spent $125 on this painting. He was furious with her, and she took it to the New York City Pier, and she thought it was very
Pier
interesting.
show, sure.
The Pier show, and jokingly put $5,000 on it, thinking, "Oh, somebody will come pay $5,000 for it." And somebody from the Met that she knew, one of the curators there, said, "Where did you get this?" And she's like, "Oh, I picked it up at a thrift store in South Carolina." She said, her husband was upset with her. He goes, "I put it away. I think you have something here." And ended up sold it to Steve Wozniak, or the guy from Apple.
Yeah.
Bought it
Woz,
I think it was $350,000 he paid for the painting.
God.
And of course, it's God, what's his name? Begins with an R. Famous artist.
Rothko?
It escapes me. Modern artist. It was of a boat. And anyway, something I would have not even looked at. But yeah. So, and he same sort of thing. He's like, "Oh my God, when that money went into our account," he goes, "we just, we photographed and took pictures of it." He goes, "We would never have that kind of money in our bank account." They wired, and they were carrying it. It was hanging in their house by the bathroom, he said. And they had to take it to Chicago to get it authenticated. He said they took it in a TJ Maxx bag that was plastic.
You never know, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, those stories are great. Mine can't be any different. And I always laugh every time Cher's name comes up because you always do the horsey Cher. So. This had caught my eye because there was, I like Darlene Love, who...
Oh, she defines Christmas, and she did the Tonight Letterman. That was the season, right?
Right. And so she had been teasing that she was going to be working on some sort of collaboration. And she didn't say what it was, and she said, "I can't say too much about what I'm doing, but it's going to be great." And so finally this week she had announced that she's actually going to be on a Christmas album that Cher's coming out with. And the album is, I'm trying to find my notes here, so let me pull it up here.
I think, on the thing here, it's just Cher Christmas, right?
Yeah, it's, here it is. It got buried in my desktop here. It's Cher teases upcoming Christmas album, "Are You Spending Christmas With Me?" So she posted that on X. And it says the 77-year-old icon has been talking about releasing new music on social media. And this past Thursday, she wrote, "Are you spending Christmas with me?" And then she posted that she's coming out with some new music. She has over 4 million followers on X.
Wow.
So they said that, so someone says, "Sorry, Mariah, but Cher is now going to take over Christmas," because Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas" is, what people hear and they either love or hate it. But boy, did she make money with that. But the new album is coming out on October 20th. And it's going to be all holiday music. And however she said, or Christmas music, she said, but it's not your typical holiday album. So she said there's no Silent Night. It's not your mother's Christmas album. It's a Cher Christmas album.
Cher.
So they said it's definitely her idea. She actually has a new song on there, too. It's going to have a new song called "DJ Play a Christmas Song." She's also doing a number of duets. And so Darlene Love will be one of the people on the duet. Stevie Wonder, Michael Bublé, and so Darlene Love, Michael Bublé, Stevie Wonder, and Cyndi Lauper, to name a few, and Tyga is on there also. So
Darlene Love is like 82 right now.
Yeah.
So for her to, I think I'm interested in. I love Christmas albums, especially when they're contemporary artists. But I think what Cher is doing sounds interesting by not having the typical stuff, right?
Right. And Cher says she declared this is as good as any record I've ever made. And I thought to myself, I've always said this. I don't know why every artist doesn't do a Christmas album. I think it's guaranteed money. Right? Because once a year, between Thanksgiving and, New Year's, people are going to play it, even if it's bad. There's not a lot of Christmas music out there. There's some country stuff. And then I thought maybe you and I need to write a Christmas song. Focus group Christmas song. I don't know what it would be, but if we had bells, church bells, you have to have bells. There needs to be bells, sleigh bells, hand bells, cow bells, whatever. You need to have bells, right? It needs to be fast paced with bells. Ching, 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 ching. And then it becomes a guaranteed annuity.
Sometimes everyone who's listening, if you know our history, I've known Tim since we were sophomores in high school. And yet, at moments like this, I do puzzle about your brain and how it works. It's got to have bells. It's got.
Well, I thought to myself, I thought, can we write a Christmas song? Because I listened to that Mariah Carey song. I think they say she gets 100 and some million a year in royalty since 1994.
It's an enormous amount. It's for a small window. It's like 7 weeks out of the year that song gets heavy rotation. She gets a big fat check, right?
And I worked with a woman. She was a temp that was in California. She wrote the words to Wendy. Everyone knows it's Wendy, and Wendy's got stormy.
We know
That's all she ever did, right? Paid for all her kids' college, got her first house. I'm thinking, all we need is one song, John. You can write. You're smart. You got a good vocabulary. You can rhyme.
There you go, folks. We just cracked.
We just need someone to do the music.
You need someone who knows grammar and language who could rhyme. Maybe we should do some Christmas song called "Me and I."
Me and I. Oh,
all about how you and I always screw up. Me and I.
Spend Christmas
Santa and me,
with
Santa and I.
With all our bad grammar. That's actually not a bad idea.
Well, it would kill two birds with one stone. It would prove we actually have brain cells. And then at the end of the song, we figure out me and I.
Well, it would drive Frank DeCaro nuts. He still gets mad at the Vogue, Madonna's Vogue, where she says, ladies with an attitude, fellas that were in the mood.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fellas who were in the mood. He used to go crazy about that. So, but anyway, we digress.
Excellent. Good. Caught our eye.
Yeah. Say, hey, as many of you know, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and you get there by going through focusgroupradio.com and clicking on the Deep Discount logo. There's all kinds of great material there, media and other gifts, as well as we get into the fall and winter seasons and gift giving time. But this month on the Focus Group is Criterion Month, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Nash and tell you about all the great things Criterion has to offer, as well as with the new releases this week, Mr. Nash.
Well, for starters, a Criterion sale is a fantastic opportunity to pick up some of your favorite movies. A lot of my favorites, Criterion has picked up, distributed. They redo they clean up the film, they redo the audio track. They usually add some great stuff, director and actor commentary behind the scenes. A movie that I really would, and our friend Lauren at Deep Discount talks with me about this as well. I'm dying for Criterion to someday do the Criterion version of Amadeus, the theatrical version of the movie that we saw.
I'm surprised I haven't done it yet.
I know it's right for the picking, folks, and I would love to have that on Criterion. Before we get to but I wanted to say that we're giving away DVDs and Blu-rays courtesy of Criterion because they provided us with a great stack of wonderful movies. We're going to give those away in a second. All month we're doing the game Pick That Flick. But before we do that, I want to mention that we do have a new release, and this is a movie I did want to see. You know how lately, Tim, we're not in the pandemic screwed up a lot of things about going to the movies. You just used to go to the movies. Well, anyway, the new release this week is the movie Air. It's director Ben Affleck. Air reveals the game-changing partnership between a then undiscovered Michael Jordan and Nike's fledgling basketball division, which revolutionized the world of sports and culture with the Air Jordan brand.
Wow.
It still kicks today, right? People buy these shoes, they collect them, they trade them. So the new release this week is Air on Blu-ray, and that's directed by Ben Affleck. It also stars Jason Bateman, Chris Messina, Marlon Wayans, Chris Tucker, Viola Davis, and, of course, Matt Damon. So it's a good film. Now, we're going to play Pick That Flick, and here's how it goes. I'm going to play a clue from a movie, about 8 seconds long. If you know the name of the movie this clip came from, drop us a letter at letters@focusgroupradio.com, and I should say it's an email. Who sends letters? So it's letters@focusgroupradio.com if you know the name of the movie this came from.
I'm a desperate man. And second, I want some fresh coffee. And third, I want a recount.
All right. So if you know the name of the movie this came from, letters@focusgroupradio.com. Include your mailing address if it's an email you don't check too often. If it's something you check frequently, I'll let you know. If you want, you could forward me the address. I'll play the clue again.
I'm a desperate man. And second, I want some fresh coffee. And third, I want a recount.
Tim, I love watching Tim as he puzzles. You know the movie. You probably haven't seen it in a while. I found this piece. I'm like, let's see how good the listeners are. And the listeners are great, by the way. You guys always get the clues. So it's Criterion Month again at Deep Discount. Get to Deep Discount by visiting focusgroupradio.com, our site. Click on the Deep Discount logo. It's a shark. And begin your shopping experience. And by all means, check out the Criterion Collection. You could actually sort by studio. You can see everything they have there. The release this week is Air, directed by Ben Affleck, about the origination of Michael Jordan's Air at Nike, the Nike shoes that transform basketball and shoes and sneakers in general. So there you go, folks. And good luck with Pick That Flick. So we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, we have a business birthday, the only show in the universe that does that, and shop talk about how entrepreneurs are often kicked out of the hiring system if you want to join the workforce. So stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here with Mr. John T. Nash. And we are the Focus Group. And John, during the break, I was able to check to see what the artist was because it was bothering me. We talked about the artwork that the woman had found and sold for $350,000. It was an Edward Hopper.
Oh, my God.
It was of a sailboat, a little picture of a sailboat.
A hopper? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
And but can you imagine finding something like that? Yeah.
And you know what? If I would have loved to have found an Edward Hopper. I love his work. She was probably drawn to it because of the style and that oh my God.
But it was, as you said, it was filthy. It was stuck in some, thrift store. You wonder how that stuff gets there, right? I guess somebody probably dies and just,
yes,
we don't want
that's
it.
That's exactly what happens. And people don't know what they're just got to clean the apartment out or the house.
So hey, we have our business birthday today, Mr. Nash.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
This is a short one today. Born September 13th in 1919. He died at 84 in 2004. His name is Asher Dick Kelty. And what he did, particularly in the outdoor industry, was pretty remarkable. Yet there's really no bio on him or not a lot of information. So I had to really scour. And not surprisingly, the New York Times obituary for him had probably the most information. But are you familiar with him, or you know now because you know what he?
Well, now I know what he did.
Had you heard the name before?
No.
So I knew the name, and that's what kind of drew me to him when I was researching to find her business birthday. So he was one of the first gear designers to produce and market an external frame backpack, which was designed specifically for civilian use. So at the time, it was a very innovative design. It was made of lightweight aluminum, and the frame would contour to the body for hikers. So if you were doing if you're going hiking, it was far lighter than what had come before up until like the mid last century. And I remember it being the preferred or recommended backpack when we were at Pomperaug High School. I was in the outdoors club. And Leif Arneson and Matt Donovan both had these Kelty backpacks.
Yes. Now it rings a complete bell, and it was those two.
And then I believe Jennifer Hummel probably got one. And they were expensive, but I remember I needed to have a Kelty backpack. It was like having to have the CB jackets for skiing or something. And they had them, and I remember getting one, and it really was remarkable. So he was considered to be the inventor, as I said, of this aluminum frame backpack. And as a side note, he was also the provider of all the gear in the 1970s cult classic TV series, The Land of the Lost. So he
No
provided
way.
all
No
the
way.
gear for that. Yeah.
No way. One of my favorite Saturday morning shows with a sleeve stack. And
Yeah.
okay, this makes
So
sense.
he was born in Duluth, Minnesota. He moved to California as a child. He worked for Lockheed Overseas Corporation in England, and then he joined the Navy, and then worked as a carpenter for years in Southern California. He was an avid hiker in the Sierra Nevada, and he started to try to figure out how to make these backpacks better. So when he did these contoured backpacks, they also, he said before this, they were very heavy, and they had heavy frames, heavy wooden frames, and just a canvas bag. So this backpack he made also had padded shoulder straps, which was a big deal, and also waist straps, which helped shift the weight for the hiker from the shoulders to the hips. And so he really revolutionized the backpack and started his own company, the Kelty Pack, or Kelty, the manufacturer of high-end backpacks now, tents, sleeping bags, and so forth, is owned by Excel Outdoors, which is a business based in Boulder. And you can still buy the stuff at places like Eastern Mountain Sports, REI, et cetera, the outdoor stores. And then he also invented or started making tents out of polyester versus nylon because it was better for waterproofing and so forth. So he really was, if you're in the outdoor space, somebody you should know. I couldn't find any information out about this, but the last thing it said in the obit was he had a son. Kelty had a son named Richard Kelty, who became one of the founders of Sierra West, a competing company. So obviously there must have been a problem with the family.
Well, you show a picture. It must be his family in front of a Kelty Pack store, right?
Yeah. And
I'm assuming because it's like a husband, wife, and a boy and a girl.
So his son went off and started his own company, which competed with his dad. So I don't know. I don't quite understand. I couldn't find anything about it, but it was interesting. I couldn't find. There's some light information about the Kelty company, which the brand is still in existence. But to try to find anything about him was somewhat tough. But he's our business birthday this week.
I like that one, and I remember when you brought up Leaf, and I do remember when everybody had to have that aluminum frame pack, which kept, it kept your back. It didn't like crunch into your back, and
I'm trying to think where we went and bought mine. It was somewhere in Danbury, I think. I looked all over for it. It was hard to find them, but it was some outdoor store. Well, in Connecticut, it was difficult to find anything. But
you certainly didn't go to Waterbury for that one.
No, I don't think so. I think it was someplace. There was an outdoor outfitter or something, and I think my mother was. At that time, it cost $90, I think.
Oh yeah.
Which my mother was just beside herself. But we were going up on the Appalachian Trail, and I think of some of those trips now. I don't know how the parents let us do it. We would go off in the woods with Ms. Rogers or somebody else, and just go for 3 days. We'd leave on a Friday afternoon after school and come back Sunday night.
No cell phones.
No, nothing.
You might have found a payphone and called home. If you're lucky, maybe your parents answered. I mean, you remember how? Yeah.
No, there was no worry about calling anybody. I look at some of the pictures because there's once in a while some kids from high school will post pictures. I'm thinking, man, they just let us go. But,
yeah, and here you are today, Tim, still alive and kicking. Yeah.
so there you are. So John had found this story, and John and I have talked about this ourselves, which we laugh at. Everyone's talking about how great the job market is, but most people we know have a hard time finding jobs or looking for jobs. And a lot of people thought the pandemic would be helpful because you could have gone out on your own and done something maybe you always wanted to do. It kind of gave you an e-ticket to say, you know what, I'm going to try something on my own, or I'm going to go out and be an entrepreneur and do my own thing or be self-employed. And if it doesn't work, I'll just go back into the traditional workforce. But lo and behold, what this article says that John had found here is that there's a bias against people that are entrepreneurs or were self-employed, and particularly with recruiters about wanting to either interview the people and or thinking that because of stereotypes of how maybe people that are entrepreneurs or self-employed are used to running everything and doing things themselves and not taking direction very well. Sometimes that they won't even consider these folks when they're scanning through resumes. And I would tend to agree with that. There's been positions you and I over the years, and who have friends who have looked at it and said, oh my God, this was written for, this is Sarah's job. This is exactly what she does, and won't even get a call because she might have been out on her own as a copywriter or something. So was that your takeaway of this as well?
Yeah, so this really caught my eye because it coincides with a lot of articles that are popping up, including recently on CBS Sunday Morning. They had a like a video op-ed piece by a guy who was like, I've been ghosted. And you think he's talking about romance or dating. Turns out he was talking about the interview process. And we've all read these horror stories where someone does 3 months of interviews. They do 6 in person. They're brought back. They're asked to do a project. They're asked to do a PowerPoint. They have to present it. Then, boom, they hear nothing. Ghosted. And this was not the way it used to be.
No.
And I really don't think it has to be. And in fact, I'll give you an example. The reason this really caught me was because for a while I was wondering, you have a career and you do all these different things. And I thought one day, hey, it would be interesting to work for a nonprofit and contribute the knowledge that I have of marketing and advertising and branding, particularly from the LGBTQ point of view. And so I began looking around to see what was out there and what that really meant. And, your brain says, boy, these organizations would die to have that kind of knowledge on staff. It's exactly the opposite of that,
Right.
At least from the experience I had. I even had an informational lunch with a young guy who was a grant writer at a charity in Brooklyn, and he listens to me tell him about my career, and he just says, let me tell you what I think. And I said, what? He goes, I wouldn't hire you in a million years. And he must have seen my face. And he said, if I hired someone like you, within the first 6 minutes of you walking in the office, 5 people on my staff would be worried about their jobs. He goes, because our director of marketing used to do the newsletter for 3 years. I mean, so there's so much going on in this world, in this article. But in this specific case, it was recruiters and AI systems are designing or choosing to eliminate a small business owner or an entrepreneur for exactly the reasons that Tim said a moment ago. You make your own decisions, you set the schedule, the whole thing. Would you want to take orders from somebody? It raised a lot of interesting thought processes, but it also made me realize that if you have this thought process in mind that you're going to be discriminated against because you own a company, maybe it means you got to change the way you do your resume, because that's always the gatekeeper, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the things toward the end of the article, though, if there was a positive to it, it talked about that in some positions, if you knew, okay, if you were going for a new business role, perhaps, your entrepreneurial or self-employment skills would be very helpful because you're used to navigating, okay, what's it going to take to get new business, for the company. And then the other thing is to talk about innovation. They said they were talking with companies about what they really value now with employees or what the priorities were. And they said to emphasize characteristics such as innovation, passion, and creativity. And which, again, I think if you're self-employed or you're an entrepreneur, you have to have those things in spades because, again, you've got to keep the register ringing. But I have a number of friends that are, some of us chalk it up to age, that either retired early and or were forced to retire early, but still want to work and still want to do something. And they're very frustrated because, particularly with the AI thing, if you don't have the right words for them to search, there's not a human looking at it to say, oh, you know what? Not exactly, but I like the overall tone of this resume, or I like the overall tone of the letter. And you call them in. I've hired people like that, and they've been my most successful hires. I hired a kid that was, he had studied veterinary science for animal husbandry. Now, nothing to do with the auto industry. But I thought it was an interesting role. One who did birdhouse architecture. Remember her?
I love that one. That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
John, who and was a great
Super
employee
great.
and is now president of a big corporation in Minnesota, worked in the glass industry. So, I brought people in based upon their background and knowing that they could learn the skill or just be smart, intelligent people, creative people. But AI would never pick out those people because they would immediately be eliminated. And I think that so many people, there's a bias. And I think so many people are just falling through the cracks because I don't know if there's everyone says now I've heard recruiters complain, friends that are recruiters say you put something up online and there's them bombarded with thousands of resumes because it's easy to click send, right? Click send, send. But so I thought it was a good article. That
and that the story the couple of stories you recounted of individuals that you've hired that you met and talked with and thought they would be an interesting fit. That's what's missing from all of this.
Right.
I hired my very first assistant art director at my first agency was a guy that I met at my gym. loved Star Trek. We would talk. Super nice, polite, always great to see. And one day he brings me a binder. He says, would you mind looking at my work? He worked at a big accounting firm, and he was their in-house graphics guy. And what he was doing was not what I would need to be done at the agency, but it was clear that he had an interest in learning and improving. And I was like, well, I could teach you this, this, and this. He became a wonderful designer, and to this day, I see him as like, thanks for taking the chance. AI doesn't allow for that, right?
Right. No, not at all. And that's why I laugh, because the birdhouse architecture. I said I've got to talk to this person who is majored in birdhouse architecture and went to Yale.
Yeah.
Right. So it was even funnier, I think. And or the person with animal husbandry, Todd. But there was something about the resumes and what they did, and I thought, what, they'd be interesting people. And a lot of the jobs that I was hiring for were event sponsorship roles where you had to interact with all kinds of different people and be quick on your feet.
You also had to think on your feet.
Yep,
you used to tell people all the time, you're gonna be 1,200 miles away. You maybe have a payphone, and this happens. And creative problem solvers is that you? Yeah, enough said. Yeah.
No, so but I think that's where the difficulty is in some of these roles of just trying to weed through stuff and not. I think that's the downfall of some of this search engine optimization, or word. Is it A&I, the ones that are pulling out the artificial intelligence? Yeah. One person told me she actually had an interview where she had to talk to the screen. She never talked to a person. It was like a PowerPoint. And then her feedback was she wasn't looking at the camera the whole time. And that was her feedback, so she didn't go any further. But she said, can I just talk to a person? It just came back. So it's too bad. But so that's
there you go.
Yeah, but it was a good article, John. I'm glad you.
Well, and it also hit kind of close to home for me because, as I said, I was thinking like in later years, when you don't need the
something to offer. You have something to offer.
Yeah. Would and I. Anyway. Thanks for joining us here on the Focus Group today. If you missed the deep discount segment, rewind if you're actually all of this could be time shifted, and check out the deep discount segment, because we're playing a game this month for Criterion discs, DVDs, and Blu-rays called Pick That Flick. It's Criterion month over at Deep Discount. You can identify the clue the movie came from, send it to letters@focusgroupradio.com, and possibly win yourself a movie. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. Please stay safe. And did I do my little thing? I did. Okay. And we always say, don't text and drive, arrive alive. And we'll see you in the new week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.